On Sunday, we will see the Chargers take on the Las Vegas Raiders for the second time this year. The Chargers currently sitting at a 6-5 record, and the A seed in the AFC could gain a lot from a win this week. And like we do every single week, we're going to be talking about some of the keys to success for this Chargers team. Now, as mentioned, this is the second time that this team has played the Raiders so far this year. And in the week 1 matchup that we saw these teams go against each other, it was a really tough matchup. It came down to the wire with a final score of 24-19, and we saw some huge performances from both teams. And I would hope that this week's game we will see something similar with a identical outcome, at least in the win category for this Chargers team. Now, as mentioned, with a 6-5 record at the A seed in the AFC, a win under the right circumstances could jump the Chargers back into the playoffs. And as long as the Chargers can get back in the playoffs and win more games, well, obviously more games and people behind them, but by winning this week and under the right circumstances, someone else losing that's currently above them in the playoffs, they could take back control and keep things in their own hands for their playoff chances instead of having to hope for other teams' losses. So this week could be a huge week for the Chargers. So let's go ahead and not waste any more time and break down how the Chargers can win this game and what they need to do to find the best success. First things first, they need a way to slow down the Raiders' rushing attack. Josh Jacobs currently sits atop the entire league in rushing yards with a total of 1,159, as well as being 4th in rushing touchdowns with 9. Now, I will say he is currently questionable whether he will play the game or not. I'm not for 100% sure, but I do have a feeling it's more than likely that he will be playing. So the Chargers do need to be ready for a really, really strong rushing attack from the Raiders. I mean, you're going against the number 1 running back in the entire league if he does play. That's nothing you can just haphazardly prepare for. And the Chargers have struggled already immensely against some lesser talent throughout the year. With such a strong runner in the backfield in Josh Jacobs, the Raiders, are pretty much guaranteed to get yards on the ground, no matter how great the Chargers defense is. No matter what holes, gaps you're filling, and the coverage that you're in, all this stuff, when you have a guy that's producing at such a high level, that has that much confidence, and a team overall that knows they can rely on this guy, he will find a way to get yards for this team. So the Chargers, need to be prepared for it, but they can't be shocked when Josh Jacobs still finds a way to have a really good game. They need to keep it together no matter how great Jacobs has done throughout the entire game. Now, on the other side of things, the Chargers aren't great at all in rushing defense, currently sitting at 27th in the entire league in rushing yards allowed, near the very bottom of the league, allowing big chunk plays, big yards to practically anyone that steps on the field. We've seen Travis Etienne, we've seen James Conner, we've seen Christian McCaffrey. All these guys have already had really big games against the Chargers. Now, I will say, the week 1 matchup, Josh Jacobs was held to 60 or 70 yards. So they did a really good job in that week 1, but I think the biggest factor in why they did good and why they've struggled since, and there's a stat on this, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but is that Joey Bosa injury. Since the Joey Bosa injury, the yards per carry and the total yards has nearly doubled in rushing per game. Absolutely insane how big of a difference Joey Bosa brings. So I do expect Josh Jacobs to have a better game than he did in week 1, being the fact that Joey Bosa is still missing time. Now, the best bet for the Chargers' success in preventing the rushing attack by the Raiders is to get ahead really early, put the pressure on the Raiders, and force them to put the ball in the air to, not chew up so much clock. When you're running the ball, the clock isn't stopping as frequently as when you're passing the ball, which you're going to want to pass the ball more to hopefully limit the amount of wasted time overall for the Raiders. So the Chargers need to get up very early. And they need to find a way to load the box up. You got guys like Michael Davis and Derwin James who are, a bigger body who is also very fast and can get in coverage really quick. Load the body using them. They can drop into coverage on Davante Adams or anyone else pretty solidly. Load the box, make it hard for Josh Jacobs to run, but know that you still have to be ready for the passing attack. That is the best case scenario and the best thing that the Chargers need to do to hopefully slow down Josh Jacobs as well as the remaining running backs for the Raiders and have a good game against a really, really strong running back in Josh Jacobs for the Raiders. Now, the next topic I want to cover here is the fact that the Chargers still need to be prepared for passing. Although the Raiders are great in the run game, by all means, they have been extremely good. You can't just go all in and not expect the Raiders to find a way to have a good game through the air. Currently, Derek Carr ranks 8th in the league in passing yards with 2,730. Top 10 in passing yards. So he has been very, very good, exceptionally good so far this year. Now, I will say, I don't expect him to do incredible, being the fact that Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver 2, is on IR, as well as Darren Waller, the best tight end, one of the best tight ends in the league, is also on IR. Going to prevent, a lot of huge plays from producing, take away a lot of their weapons. And with all that being said, you still have Davante Adams. And Davante Adams by himself will find a way to have a big game, no matter who is out on the field with him. In Week 1, the Chargers would allow 141 yards on 10 receptions and a touchdown to Davante Adams. That is a ton of plays, and a huge portion of that came in the first half of the game. So the Chargers need to be prepared. Yes, they need to go all on the run defense, but they can't overplay it to the point where Davante Adams is just ripping them apart past the line of scrimmage. Now, the fact is Davante Adams will likely get his share of catches no matter what the Chargers do. If they go all in the run game or not, Adams will find a way to get his catches. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that he's covered in some pivotal moments. On third down, you need to make sure that he's fully covered because that's going to be the main target in that scenario. In the red zone, make sure that he's double covered if you can cover him. You have plenty of good DBs. Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr., even Michael Davis, I think, could all effectively cover him over short stints of time throughout this game. So you need to find a way to, move pieces around, get different people covering him, and keep him double covered as much as you can, whether that's man into a zone, all this stuff. Just keep him consistently covered, and you can't lose track of Davante Adams the way that they lost track of Travis Kelce against the Chiefs. You need to keep your eyes on him, and if you can slow him down, you're going to slow down the passing game of the Raiders entirely. So that is the key factor in being prepared for the pass, is finding a way to slow down Davante Adams, which will immediately slow down Derek Carr. Another big factor in slowing down the passes and being ready for the passes is to get pressure. Now, this isn't a full thing here, but get pressure on Derek Carr. Joey Bosa said himself, it seems like when Derek Carr has pressure on him and you sack him a couple times, he starts to get a little bit worse. So, find a way to get pressure on Khalil Mack, Chris Rumph, Kyle Van Noy, whomever it is. Find a way to get some early sacks on him and, stress him out a little bit, which will force him to make some passes a little bit quicker and is going to, limit the fact of some huge, deep plays down the field. So, Chargers need to be prepared for the passing attack as well as the rushing attack. And another key here that I kind of skipped over is the Chargers have struggled a lot recently with tackling. Josh Jacobs has been extremely good. I think he might be the best in the league at breaking tackles and getting yards after that. But Davante Adams is also extremely good at it with 357 yards after the catch. So when the Chargers have, control of them, make the tackle, and if you can't make the tackle, just slow him down enough, hold him enough that someone else can come recover and make that tackle for you. Just another thing to add on to that point. Next topic here is, Justin Herbert is starting to get back on track. You need to keep him on that pace. Justin Herbert and the offense throughout most of the year have seemed to be struggling quite a lot, if we're being honest with ourselves. Bad timed turnovers, minimal offensive production, you're not using pieces at the right times, as well as injuries. I think injuries have been one of the biggest factors for the entire team, but especially with the offense. Now, with the return of Keenan Allen the past few weeks, as well as Garrett Everett coming back last week, although I don't think he was fully healthy last week, with both those guys being fully healthy this week, I think things are going to really start to open up for Justin Herbert, as well as Austin Eckler, of course. Herbert has, consistently had great games versus the Raiders overall. In this earlier week 1, he had 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 76% completion percentage. He also had a really, really good game in the final week of the year. Final game of the year last year. Don't want to talk about that too much. But Herbert has done very, very good against the Raiders overall. And not only that, but the Raiders allow the 8th most yards through the air. And Justin Herbert ranks top 5 in passing yards by himself. And all that without a single wide receiver, running back, or any of that being in the top 30 in receiving yards. Top 5 in passing yards, but no one is in the top 30. That really shows how effective Herbert is at spacing the field and using multiple resources to gain those yards long term. Keenan Allen has been, a huge factor in this offense, especially since his return. I think that's kind of the major reason why I think Herbert is going to get back in track and have a good game here. Keenan Allen has really opened up a lot of things. His first week back, we see Joshua Palmer have a really good game, have like 100 and some yards and a touchdown. Last week, we see DeAndre Carter have a really good game. He gets a touchdown, he gets a bunch of yards. But I think the biggest factor in Keenan Allen's return is on the third downs. We know we called him Captain Clutch last year, and I think it's been overshadowed a lot this year. For the most part this year, the Chargers have not been good on third downs as well as fourth downs. I think we've all kind of realized that since Keenan Allen's return, the Chargers' third down percentage has jumped up 10%. 10%. That is a huge, huge jump, and that all just comes off of the fact that Keenan Allen comes back. Whether that means you have to double him, whether that means you're throwing to Keenan, it just opens up a lot for him. And when you throw it to Keenan, you know he's going to come down with it with those crucial catches. Also a huge factor in some of these. But the biggest factor in winning this game is going to be putting the ball in Herbert's hands. The Chargers need to get the ball moving and get it done early. Not only to take some pressure off their defense, put some pressure on the Raiders, but just get on a roll. Get Herbert throwing some deep passes, get Keenan in the fold very, very early, and just get some quick points. And once you've got some quick points, then you can start leaning on that run game a little bit more. Let Austin Ekeler gash the defense a little bit, get some big yards, and burn some clock late in the game once you get a ton of points early because of the passing game from Justin Herbert. Get your passing game going, and everything else will open up immensely. Now, the next topic here, if not the final topic, is going to be, the Chargers have kind of been road warriors so far this year. They'll be going to Vegas this week. And although that sometimes can cause some issues, I know we've seen in other sports, but also in the NFL, where players maybe fall into doing some things that maybe they shouldn't be. But the Chargers are very disciplined and, just stay out of trouble consistently. I think the Chargers have, one of the most disciplined teams, group of players in the entire league, if I'm being honest. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off, some worries that could arise from going to Vegas and playing in Vegas. But the Bolts have also been great on the road, being 4-2 on the entire year, with their only losses coming to the Kansas City Chiefs in week 2 and the 49ers just a couple weeks ago. They have also had some of their best numerical statistics on the road. And offensively, they've scored the most points consistently on the road. 34 points against Houston, you have 30 points against Cleveland, 24 against Kansas City, and 25 against Arizona. A lot of points scored when on the road. 4 of their games, of their 6 on the road, they've scored 24 or more points. That is a huge, huge jump. Their only home game of the year where they've scored more than 24 points, their only home game was against the Chiefs just 2 weeks ago, where they had 27 points. So they have, scored out of 4 of their 5 best offensive scoring games have been on the road. That is, a really, really good sign long term, because if you're in the wild card, you're going to be playing on the road there. So that's a good sign there. But also entering this game knowing that they're kind of better on the road than they are at home, which, isn't great. But I feel like I'd almost rather have the team be a lot better on the road than a lot better at home, at least in this situation with how things seem to be playing out through the remainder of the year. So the Chargers have also outperformed many of their statistical numbers on the road over, at home. Chargers averaged 348 yards on the season. They averaged 362 when they're on the road. They averaged 22.9 points on the year. They averaged 24.8 on the road. Those are the two major statistical categories for an offensive team to look at. And they do better in both categories when they are on the road. This team has been great when they're not at home, and hopefully we see this continue into this week. Now, the last thing here before we close this video out is the fact that you need to find a way to get on a roll on the back half of the season and get a late push going. The Chargers currently sit at 6-5, as mentioned, at the 8th seed, and could potentially jump to the 6th, 7th seed after this week's game. This is a really, really important game for the Chargers' playoff hopes. It's likely that they can only lose like 2 more games till the end of the year if they want to make playoffs, and potentially that might not even be enough. So this week's game is just as important as every other game, but a loss here could dramatically weigh down this team. So, after some recent struggles, the Chargers building a win streak right now would be a huge boost morally, as well as like getting guys going as the year progresses. A loss here, probably completely draining. As a team, as players, you can probably only lose 2 games, and if you somehow drop this, which I probably shouldn't be saying this, you immediately have the Dolphins and then the Titans. 2 really, really good teams in the AFC back-to-back. If you win this game, you're on a 2-game win streak. You're ending up facing the Dolphins next on Sunday Night Football, and you go out there with all this energy from these 2 good games back-to-back, hopefully, fingers crossed, and you can get on a roll here and get things going and beat some good teams to end out the season and make it in the playoffs. Winning this game here might not seem as big of a deal as it actually is, just based on momentum from winning a game like this. But what are your guys' thoughts on this game? What do the Chargers need to do to win this game? And what are your hopes, and what do you think the percentage chance of the Chargers making the playoffs is? If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope you taught something today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects most today in a great way. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.